Continuing our farm system previews, it's the Pittsburgh Pirates with the question, does Paul Skenes really have a bad fastball? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, award-winning baseball writer and podcaster, and thank you for making this your first listen every single day. We're proudly part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And today's episode's made possible by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Okay, so continuing our farm system previews, we're talking about the Pittsburgh Pirates. And as always, quick reminder, we're not going to get to every interesting prospect in this system as much as I would love to. We get a 30-minute show here. I can stretch that to 31 or 32, and that's about it. And so if there's a guy you don't hear about that you want to know more about, leave a comment, let us know, whether it's YouTube. I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball, shows on Twitter at Locked On Farm. We have a Discord, we have an email, subtext, all of that stuff. Let us know who you want to hear about, and we can throw it into the Monday mailbag. So opening up with right-hand pitcher Paul Skenes, you knew he was the number one prospect in the system. He was the number one pick in the draft last year. You know that he's a very good pitcher. I'm not going to tell you who Paul Skenes is. If you're watching this show, you know who Paul Skenes is. But you may have heard that Paul Skenes has bad fastball shape, and that's going to hold him back from his ceiling at the major league level. And so I think it's worth having a conversation. What does bad fastball shape mean? And is it something he can overcome? Okay, so when you hear the talk about fastball shape, what they are discussing is the amount of induced vertical break that your fastball has up in the zone. We call that carry, right? It's the ability of the ball, because of the spin on the ball, to resist the effects of gravity. So it doesn't drop like a hitter thinks it should. And the reason they swing and miss at an elevated fastball is because mentally, the hitter thinks the ball is going to drop farther than it actually does. Now, when you're looking at what is good, elite, bad, induced vertical break, 15 inches is considered to be average, right? 16 inches is plus, 18 inches is elite. And then below that, you get below average and poor and things like that. Paul Skenes is generally considered to have less than 14 inches of induced vertical break on his fastball. And that is what people are talking about when they say the fastball shape is bad, right? It doesn't have enough carry up in the zone for hitters to not hit it. But the unique characteristics of Paul Skenes' fastball and the rest of what he does means that, one, I don't think that's a big deal, and then two, the exact amount of carry until you get to a certain point of eliteness doesn't necessarily matter, okay? And there's been a lot of work done on this recently, and somebody that I read just recently, Eli Ben Parat, it's a researcher. He has a Substack. It's called Base Tunnel, so basetunnel.substack.com, completely free. Go check it out. But he just wrote recently about fastball shape, and long story short, he went back and pulled every four-seam fastball since MLB has had Hawkeye. That is a very large sample. And yes, elite carry is very good, right? When you're coming towards the top of the zone, when you elevate a fastball, having elite carry makes that fastball better than most other fastballs. And again, elite is 18 inches or more of induced vertical break versus the average of 15. But here's the thing. That's the only type of carry that is a differentiator, right? If you have 15 to 16, 13 to 15, it doesn't necessarily change that much. And what helps too is Paul Skenes is throwing 100 miles an hour. So you've got that. Two, once you get 2 inches above the strike zone, it doesn't matter if you have 10 inches of carry or 20 inches of carry. you get the exact same swing and miss, right? Once you get above the 2 inches above the strike zone, it doesn't matter how much your pitch carries. And to make this even better, there's this weird corollary. If your fastball is not good at induced vertical break and carry up in the zone, hitters are less likely to hit a home run off of it than if it has really good or even plus or even elite carry up in the zone. And the reasoning for that is because of the angle of the swing, the launch angle, and how the hitter is trying to, in essence, make those lines intersect, right? They want the upward plane of the swing to interact at the right point of the fastball crossing the plate. And when you have significantly below average induced vertical break, it messes with that calculus. And so in this MLB sample, having poor induced vertical break actually is the lowest possibility of giving up a home run. So here's the thing. Paul Skenes' fastball has a foot of horizontal movement. It's a horizontal fastball. It's not a vertical fastball. And he's done some things to adjust. When he got into the majors last year, he threw a lot more two-seam pitches than he did in college. He upped the use of the changeup as well. And so if you look at what he throws already, he already throws a sweeper. Now he has both a four-seam fastball and a two-seam fastball, as well as a changeup that he started throwing a lot more. You have a combination of pitches that it's all focused on horizontal movement, and he's not having to rely, he doesn't need the induced vertical break to get swings and misses, because the ball is not going to be it's not going to be at the point where you thought it was going to be. It's just, instead of being higher, it's going to be to the side because he has the horizontal movement. So no, the shape of the fastball in and of itself from the perspective of induced vertical break is not great. But also, no, it doesn't matter. Paul Skenes' arsenal is a horizontal arsenal, not a vertical arsenal. Whereas there's teams like the Atlanta Braves, they prefer a vertical game, right? They want you to work up and then down. Skenes works laterally. Not a big deal. He threw 129 of the third innings between the minors and college last year. The question we have as to when you'll see him in 24 all comes down to how he adjusts to that pitching every 5 days routine, right? Does he struggle with the move from once a week to every 5 days? I feel like he'll be fine. I was talking to Jim Callis the other day about this. You see these college pitchers go a little bit deeper, go 110, go 120. They're not going to pitch for another week. And if you told me that Paul Skenes was pitching 120 pitches every 7 days, and he's going to adjust to pitching 80 or 90 every 5, it feels like, anecdotally, that's not going to be a big deal for him. He should be fine to do that. Another top pitching prospect I want to get to real quick in here, 2021 third rounder Bubba Chandler. 25 games last year between high A and double A. 10-4 with a 4.54 ERA in 111 innings. 128 strikeouts, 10.4 per nine, 251 walks, 4.1 per nine, and 15 home runs allowed. It's a fastball slider change combination. Fastball's mid to upper 90s, changes just under 10 mile an hour difference from that. And according to the guys over at Baseball America, getting that changeup figured out was the big key for Bubba Chandler last year. First 8 games of the season, he had a 7.36 ERA with 26 walks and 32 strikeouts. But starting on May 25th, when he got a lot better idea of how to use the changeup and how to land it for strikes, from that point on, he put up an ERA of 3.5 with 25 walks to 96 strikeouts. And he finished the year with 1 outing in Double-A Altoona. 5 innings pitched, 1 hit, no walks, 8 strikeouts. There is a legitimate chance for Bubba Chandler to debut in 2024 if he comes into Double-A next year, or to start this season, and dominates as well as he did with that one brief outing in Double-A. If he gets to Double-A Altoona and he's pitching that well, you may see him in 2024. It's absolutely absurd. In just a minute, let's get into a bunch of those pitchers you're going to see in 2024, guys that Either they've been in AAA, they finished the year in AA, you have a chance to see them. We'll do that next right here on Locked on MLB Prospects. The NFL regular season is finished, but there is still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. It's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. You don't have to get the team or the bet right. You just have to place the bet. So go find NFL action next weekend for the postseason, pick a random team to win, and even if they don't, you get $150 in bonus bets that you can use at FanDuel for things like, Paul Skenes plus 3,000 for National League Rookie of the Year. Why not? Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet today with FanDuel, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. And today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Ibotta. The new year for many people means resolutions for saving money. So stop shopping without getting anything in return and start getting cash back on your purchases with Ibotta. It's a free app that gives you cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, groceries, beauty supplies, toys, no matter what. So the average Ibotta user earns $145 a year. You can use it however you want. You could pay for an entire shopping trip. You could buy tickets to a game, a fancy dinner, whatever it might be. You add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and you earn cash that you can cash out to your bank account. And it works with over 2,700 brands and retailers like Lowe's, Macy's, Best Buy, things like that. Right now, Ibotta's offering our listeners $5 just for trying the app by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Go to the App Store or Google Play Store, download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. Okay, so there's a lot of pitchers that you may see from the Pittsburgh Pirates farm system in the majors this year. So first one, right-hand pitcher Jared Jones, probably the next pitching prospect in the rankings behind Bubba Chandler as far as prestige and how good he is. 2020 second rounder out of high school. You'll notice this organization likes taking prep pitchers. 26 games last year between AA and AAA. 25 of those were starts. 5-9 with a 3.85 ERA and 126 in the third innings. 146 strikeouts, so 10.4 per nine. 250 walks, 3.6 per nine, 12 home runs allowed. His arsenal is 4 pitches, right? Fastball, sits mid-90s. He's got a traditional slider, sits in the high 80s or so, a vertical breaking curveball, and a changeup. As I understand, the changeup got significantly better last year. He did something with the grip, gave him a little bit more fade, and so he's been fastball dominant, right? 50% fastball. Now, the fastball works. He got a 17% swinging strike on the fastball last year. So the question's going to be, as he goes back to AAA this year and prepares for a call-up, is he better able to mix in some of those other pitches? And then what does the overall kind of command do? I think he needs to use the changeup more. He needs to be able to land the curveball for a strike and then just streamline some of the mechanics a little bit. If he can work on those things, Jared Jones is a guy you could see by the second half of the year, if not earlier, because he's got all the tools, he's got all the weapons, he can do all the stuff you need. Left-hand pitcher Anthony Solometo, 2021 second rounder, again out of high school, a little bit farther away. 24 games between high A and double A, went 4-7 with a 3.26 ERA. 110 in the third innings, and the thing you'll notice here, these pitchers in this system rack up innings. I love to see it. 110 in the third innings for Anthony Solometo, 118 strikeouts, so 9.6 per nine, 239 walks, 3.2 per nine, and 8 home runs allowed, 0.7 per 9 innings. He throws a 4-seamer and a 2-seamer, sits in the low 90s. Obviously, the goal, you throw a 4-seamer up. The 2-seamer is going to run to the arm side. He counters the 2-seamer with a slider in the mid-80s. It's not a true sweeper. It's sweeper-ish, right? So it's a lot of horizontal movement, but it's got some vertical on there as well. And then a changeup in the low 80s. He started the year off rocky, really dialed it in a little bit as he went through the season. But the thing for Anthony Solometo is he's got to get the changeup better. We've talked on the show before, everydayers have heard this, about how lefties need that changeup to be working because it's something that's going to move it's going to move away from a right-handed hitter, right? Now, when you have a two-seamer, normally I would say getting the changeup dialed in isn't as important, but having an effective changeup, especially if it has similar movement to your two-seamer, one, the changeup's going to have more drop and it's going to have that velocity difference, so it's going to help the two-seamer avoid being sat on by opposing hitters. And a guy that's throwing low 90s compared to somebody like Skenes throwing 100, that means that you have a slimmer margin for error, right? You're going to have to be a little more consistent and a little more diverse with what you throw. So getting that changeup to be a little bit better and then just staying mechanically sound to throw strikes is going to be important for Anthony Solometo. If he comes up, it feels like it's going to be later in the year simply because, again, 24 starts between high A and double A. Yet another pitcher, Braxton Ashcraft. Really like him. He's got lower innings counts because he missed 2020 like everybody did, and then had Tommy John in late 21 that took away all of 2022 from him. So second rounder in 2018, again out of high school, but only threw 52 and 2/3 innings last year. It was 19 starts between single A, high A, and double A. 0-3 with a 2.39 ERA. I do how much he was able to throw strikes and to minimize the walks. 63 strikeouts for Braxton Ashcraft. It's 10.8 per 9 to 11 walks, 1.9 per 9, and 4 home runs allowed. Thing here, fastball's in the mid-90s, and he's one of those elite-ish numbers on induced vertical break. It's 18 inches of induced vertical break. Very good fastball up in the zone. Slider sits in the high 80s. It's a vertical breaking curveball in the low 80s, and he's got a cutter. He didn't throw the changeup a lot last year. Some of the reports were that he intentionally shelved it to work on other stuff. I'm hoping he brings it back. But either way, that and then getting a little more differentiation between the slider and the cutter, I think is going to be useful here. But Braxton Ashcraft, the biggest thing, he looked good last year coming back. It's going to be, one, reacclimating to better competition. Probably going to start him back off in Double-A Altoona with the goal of getting him to Triple-A sooner rather than later. And then just getting that innings count up. Because he only got 52 and 2/3 innings last year, I'm really hesitant to say that he'll get up in 2024, but I've got him in here because it's entirely possible, depending on how he looks at spring training, they may throw him into Triple-A to start the year. There's two other guys that got a lot of major league time but didn't quite graduate prospect eligibility yet. And that was second baseman Nick Gonzalez and right-hand pitcher Quinn Priester. And really interesting, the major league results for both of these guys were not great, right? Nick Gonzalez, when he was drafted, he was seen as a plus hit tool kind of guy at second base. He really struggled to make contact last year. Under 70% contact rate, zone contact of only 76.5%. And the issue that he has is his power isn't good enough to offset lower contact, right? His average exit velocity, 87.4. His 90th, 102.5, which is just below the average of 103. So slightly below average power and below average hit tool from a guy that was marketed or initially believed when he was drafted to be a plus hit tool guy. So we need to see some growth from Nick Gonzalez. And then Quinn Priester, 2019 first rounder out of high school, where else? He's actually, if I understand this correctly, he's actually 1 out away from graduating prospect eligibility. So he literally went as far as he could without popping that prospect eligibility thing. Fastball, curveball, slider change thing here. The two things he has to do, one, he's got to throw more strikes. He gets himself in disadvantage counts a lot. He walks a lot of guys, and it's not great. And then the second thing, the fastball and the changeup are too close together. Movement-wise, velocity-wise, all of that, you've got to have more separation on those two. And there's a couple guys we'll talk about in the lower minors that have similar changeup issues. I'm beginning to wonder if there's maybe some sort of deficiency in the organization about teaching changeups or coaching changeups or maybe correctly figuring out how to improve a guy's changeup. Just I'm not saying it's a problem. I'm just wondering because I've noticed a common trend with some of these guys. In just a minute, we'll get to those lower minors, guys you should watch for 2024. We'll do that next, right here on Locked On MLB Prospects. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Jase Medical. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of some medications. ADHD medication's been hard to find. Some antibiotics, like amoxicillin, are hard to find, and we're in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. And so something that I did was got myself a Jase case. It's a pack of 5 different antibiotics that treats a long list of bacterial illnesses. Respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, UTIs, all kinds of stuff. Things that can happen to almost anybody and it not be your fault. And so if that's something that you think would be useful for you, visit jasemedical.com, complete your physician encounter. It'll get reviewed by a board-certified physician, and the medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy and mailed to you at a fraction of the regular cost. So go to jasemedical.com, use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. That's Jase Medical, Jase Medical.com, offer code LOCKEDON. Okay. Final segment of Locked On MLB Prospects, doing the Pittsburgh Pirates farm preview for 2024. Real quick, want to remind you that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows like this one, covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube, subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, and it's coming soon to Roku and Fire TV devices. Okay, so when looking at this system, the big guy that we haven't talked about yet is second baseman Termarr Johnson. And if you're not an everydayer, if you found the show, YouTube recommendation, friends sent you the podcast, whatever it might be, 1, welcome in, super glad you're here. 2, for a breakdown of Termarr Johnson. We talked about this recently. If you're on YouTube, I'll put it up here in the corner. But if you're not, go to the Monday, December 4th show. It was a mailbag. Timestamp 11:36 on video. On audio, it's right at the start of the second segment. And we talked about Termarr Johnson and about how he's at that point in his development where he has to decide, is he a power hitter or is he a contact hitter? He has multiple different development paths. He can absolutely still be a productive major leaguer. He just has to decide which direction he's going to go. So again, it's the Monday, December 4th show, the start of the second segment. If you're on video, the timestamps are at 11:36 on that. Shortstop Sung-Shae Chang, 2021 IFA, interesting guy here. 123 games between high A and double A, about 535 plate appearances. And he batted .278, .353, .456, 13 home runs, 46 extra base hits, 52 walks to 100 strikeouts, and 26 of 38 on stolen bases. He's been mostly at shortstop, 84 games at shortstop to 41 at second base. But I think his future is a utility guy that can move all around the field, right? Now, the thing to look at here is his contact ability, very good. Contact rate of 80%, zone contact of 84%. Now, the flip side of that is the exit velocities are average at best, but he can be a little bit surprising. So the typical thing you'll see is he's really good at getting a ball in a gap and running for days, right? He'll frequently get doubles. It's just laced to the gap, but he can also get into one on the pull side and get it out for a home run. So a lot of his home runs end up being pulled balls. I think that the eventual future for Chang is some sort of utility profile, a guy that's, again, really going to have good on base, going to have good batting averages, power. You're looking at a 10 to 15 homer guy if he were to start an entire season, but he can also contribute in the running game, and then his defense is fine. So I think it's going to be interesting to see where he starts off in 24 and then what kind of role he ends up getting in. So really curious about that. 2 more pitchers that I really like here, and then a couple guys I want to mention real quick before we do our dart throw. Right-hand pitcher Thomas Harrington, the rare non-prep draftee. He was a 2022 first-rounder out of Campbell. got in 26 games last year between single A and high A. 7-6 with a 3.53 ERA and 127 and a third innings. 146 strikeouts, so 10.3 per nine, 241 walks, 2.9 per nine, and 14 home runs allowed, right at 1 per 9 innings. Throws a 4-seamer and a 2-seamer. It sits low to mid 90s on those. He's got a low 80s slider and then a mid to upper 80s changeup. It doesn't have that 10 mile an hour separation we talk about, but the movement profile is pretty good, so it works. Again, ideally, you want to see a little bit more separation on that. It's in the upper 80s. The arm speed matches, and again, the movement is good. You just wish it was a little bit slower, and I think the key to that's going to be getting a little more consistent fastball velocity versus trying to slow down the changeup, because the arm speed matches, the tunnel matches, it's velocity-wise pretty close to the fastballs, and you'd rather it be closer to 10 miles an hour. Like I said, it's a trend in this organization of some hard changeups here. I don't know if that's an organizational philosophy, but it's really interesting to observe. Right-hand pitcher Xander Moth. I think that's right. Mueth. 2023 second rounder out of high school. Big boy. He's like 6'6", right? And so throws a fastball, can already run it up to 96. Tons of extension on it. Really good changeup and a sweeper in the low 80s. I like the grouping. We didn't see him throw after the draft. A lot of these numbers come from showcases and things like that. So we need to see what he looks like when he settles down. I do want to see him adjust to that profile. It's very much you've got the fastball up, you've got the changeup and the sweeper going extremes to the side. Add either a vertical breaking curveball to bring in a fourth direction, or add a cutter to bring in a fourth velocity band. A little bit of work you can do there. I'm curious to see which direction he goes on the development, but we'll see what happens there. A couple interesting guys I want to point out, two lefty pitchers. Left-hand pitcher Hunter Barco out of Florida, so there's a second prep pitcher, although, again, University of Florida doesn't develop their pitchers that well. Low sinker in the low 90s, changeup in the high 80s, another guy with not a ton of separation velocity-wise between those two, but the changeup's got really good movement, right? He's got a good slider, throws a ton of strikes. Another guy where I think the key to separating the changeup and the fastball is going to be more velocity to the fastball versus trying to bring the changeup down. The changeup's good as is for Hunter Barco. Left-hand pitcher Michael Kennedy is in a similar boat to Barco. Low 90s fastball. It's got a very low vertical approach angle and some good run to it. A changeup in the upper 80s. Again, needs more velocity separation. And a slider in the low 80s that's not a sweeper, but it's sweeper-ish. It's more horizontal than vertical movement. The difference between him and Barco is he doesn't do a great job of throwing strikes. It's a low strike percentage, walk rate's like 13%, so you need to see a little bit of work there on that. And again, another guy who I think if you can add some velocity to the fastball, it's going to help differentiate the fastball from the changeup, because the changeup, both these guys I feel like have good changeups. Barco's is obviously better as a college draftee, but both of the changeups are good. The key to getting more separation is going to be increasing the velocity of the fastball versus trying to mess with the changeup. Last guy, outfielder Lonnie White Jr. Really good, super toolsy outfielder, was a football recruit that they got to do baseball. Great power, 90th exit velocity, 90th percentile exit velocity of 105. Gets really good launch angles. Contact in the zone of only 75%. Super toolsy, but raw. You've got some stuff to work on. Excited about that. For our dart throw, I want to tell you about right-hand pitcher David Matoma. In November 2021, there was a tournament in Kampala, Uganda, and the Pirates had a scout there. And so David Matoma ended up signing last year in the international signing period. He's the third ever player to sign out of Uganda to MLB. He's got a fastball that sits like he can touch 97 with it. Really good carry up in the zone. Sliders in the upper 80s. He's young. He's incredibly athletic. He's incredibly raw, right? There's not a giant baseball there's not a giant baseball community in Uganda. And so there's a lot of potential now that he's going to be in the organization, getting coaching every day. This is the type of athlete that can rapidly improve how well he pitches. So really curious to see what David Matoma does in 2024 in the system all year with professional coaches. Think he could be a guy, if everything clicks, he could absolutely take off. Fantastic week this week. We're doing the NL Central. So we've got the Cincinnati Reds coming up, followed by the Chicago Cubs. Going to be fun, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, if you got questions for Monday's Mailbag, I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Show's on Twitter at Locked On Farm. Email, Discord, subtext, all of that stuff. It's in the episode description. It's in the show notes under the link tree down there. So let me know. In the meantime, remember, it's always a great time to pay a minor leaguer.